Hello, welcome to this reading recap. I noticed that December is almost over. Like, when did that happen? I have no idea, but I think tomorrow, at least when I am recording this video, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Oh my god. So, without further ado, I just want to talk about the books I read in December. The first book I read is Unbury the Bones by Coyote G.M. Edwards. Unbury the Bones is an urban fantasy / cozy fantasy story. It's about Grimm, a non-binary vampire and also some sort of detective, and their partner, Argyle. I'm not sure if that's how I'm supposed to pronounce his name. He's a werewolf, just overall a fluffy, nice guy. They live in this city where magic exists, where magical beings exist, and that's all part of their normality. However, strange things are starting to happen, and people get attacked, or things explode. Certain people are just really unlucky all of a sudden. So unlucky that it raises suspicions, and that Grimm figures what's going on is not normal. Someone is doing that. Grimm and Argyle are starting to investigate. This is a novella, so I'm not going to say any more than that. However, the underlying theme in this novella, the underlying plot, is that Grimm has issues letting anyone close to them. They have a very special gift, and that is to see the skeletons of people, and the skeleton gets more visible the closer the person is to dying. Due to that, but also I think due to something in their past or some guilt they carry, they have difficulties allowing anyone to get close because they believe they don't deserve that. Argyle, on the other hand, is just that fluffy guy, and he's not ready to give up. He wants to befriend Grimm, and he's really trying. I love that book. I enjoyed the read so much. I loved the city. I loved the whole plot. I loved the setting. I loved the two main characters and their relationship. I loved that it was a little bit Arrow Ace coded. Although I do not think there is really a romance underlying here. I think it's more like a bromance. A thoroughly enjoyable read. I wish it were longer. It's just a novella, so it's pretty short. I wish it were a 400 pages book, but I really, really enjoy it, and I know the author has more books in that setting. The next book I read is The Woman in the Cabin by Becca Day. This is a thriller, and it's almost a little bit of a locked-in mystery, although not like truly locked in. It's not like a door that closes and you're in a room and can't get out. It's not an escape room scenario. But there is this woman, and she lives in that cabin with her husband, and she's the perfect wife, and everything she does is absolutely perfect. They're in the middle of nowhere. They're in the Scottish Highlands, and the landscape is beautiful and vast, and it implies so much freedom. And I love that setting because the vast nature and the sense of being free when you're in such an area stood in high contrast to the actual plot, where this woman was in this cabin in the middle of nowhere and just couldn't leave. Now, she lives this life. There are cracks in her life all of a sudden. She notices she's aging and that her husband probably won't like that. We get glimpses and pieces of things he forces her to do and the things she does to make him stay content with her. Then, and this is not a spoiler, this is literally on the blurb, she finds a stack of letters, coincidentally, and these letters are from the woman who was in this cabin before her. This is a pretty bleak story. It's horrifying, it's sad, it's bleak, I did not know this would be the direction it would be going, or that would be the overall plot, but it's one of those domestic violence, woman being locked in or not able to leave, possibly violent husband. That's a pretty popular topic in, I think, a lot of thrillers actually, and it also makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It's for obvious reasons. I still really enjoyed this. I think this was well written. I have read some reviews where they say it didn't give thriller vibes to them, and I don't know, I can't tell for sure because I do not read a lot of thrillers. This is one of the first thrillers I've read, and I do not know the expectations of genre fans. I can only say that I enjoyed this, but I also get when some people say it read less than a thriller and more like a horror-ish story. I will not tell you why, because we are progressing spoiler territory here. Or you know what? I might. But I will give you a little moment to skip ahead. So if you don't want to know any spoilers, just skip to the next part. So a spoiler is soon coming. I hope you managed to skip ahead if you don't want to hear this. Okay, the thing is that this woman is locked in there, and her husband is keeping her there, and there's a whole underlying plot of kidnapping, abuse, heavy abuse, and he's just horrible. And she sets up this plan to make him discontent with her. She gets pregnant, actually, which was not supposed to happen, and he just loses it, and she doesn't understand why. We have Stockholm Syndrome here. She wants him to be so discontent with her that he looks for another woman, because that's what he does. And this is where we hit very gruesome territory, and where people say that it's more like horror-ish, because it's so horrible. It's like a Criminal Minds episode, actually. He kidnaps these women and then keeps them locked in a cage, a literal cage, and abuses them. Actually, physically tortures them. He keeps telling them that their name is Mary and they're his wife, etc., etc. It's really, really horrible. He finds a new woman. So the main character also deals with that guilt, because she actually pushed him to that, but obviously it's not her fault. She's not at fault for his actions. Then wants to save herself and the woman, and a lot of things happen, and she runs when she is about to give birth. And a lot of things then happen. Actually, this is when we enter the last fourth of the book, I would say. And then the twists keep coming. We learn about his relationship with his parents, and there's a moment where I wasn't sure if all of this is truly happening or if it's just in her mind. And I think this was very well done. Actually, I think the whole book was well done. I liked the whole calmer first part of the book. There's not like a lot of action happening, but you're constantly tense. You're so tense whenever she goes through stuff and wants to find a key or tries to do something secretly. You're so stressed. I think that's very well done. I also think that the whole twist with him kidnapping this other woman was very well done. I did not see that coming. I will say that the last fourth of the book with the last twist was almost a little bit too much. But that's me just not knowing what to expect from the thriller genre, because I do not have many comparisons. It ends well as a story can end, where a person was kidnapped and locked in and abused for 10 years. But it does end on a positive note. But yeah, that's the overall premise, the actual premise. And the spoiler is over. I will say I enjoyed the read. I like the book. I get why people have mixed opinions on this for various reasons, but I think it was very well done. The next book I read was The House in the Cerulean... Okay. Once again, the next book I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, and this is a new favorite. This might be my new favorite book of all time. That's how much I enjoyed it. This is a cozy fantasy with an underlying romance, but the romance part is really not in any way the main topic. Just to summarize it, because it's a super popular book and I am sure a lot of you have A, read it, B, heard about it. It's about Linus. Linus Baker is an official / caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth. So this is a world where there are magical children. They just exist. We do not know why they have magic. And obviously it's a metaphor for something else, something in our real world. These magical children are kept in orphanages, which are really not orphanages because no one there gets adopted, which is also something that gets, a topic that gets explored in the book, because why call it orphanage when no one goes there to adopt a child. Linus is a caseworker. He goes to these places, checks on incidents happening there, like if one child hurts another or if something is happening. And then he writes a report, and in his reports either suggests for the orphanage to be closed or for it to remain open. So one day is summoned by extremely upper management. Obviously, this book is written with a little bit, a little wink. It's obviously a caricature. I struggle, this is just a side note, I sometimes struggle with words of Latin origin because we use them in my native tongue too, in my mother tongue. I'm speaking German, and we use a lot of Latin words, but we pronounce them differently. And a word like caricature is something we have in German, but we don't pronounce it like that. I think the way we pronounce it is much closer to the original Latin spelling, pronunciation, whereas in English it's obviously adapted to English pronunciation, and I struggle a little bit with that, so please forgive me for sometimes stumbling over certain words. Also, I'm just talking here and I do not have a script or anything, so errors might happen. I'm so sorry. Okay, where was I? Yeah, all of this is just a little on purpose, done a little silly, obviously. I mean, it's extremely upper management, the management of this official state department. And yeah, Linus gets summoned there and they tell him he has to go and investigate a super secret orphanage, and the whole investigation is top secret. He's picked because, and we know that at that point already, although it gets more obvious later, because he usually does not ask any questions. He's not a bad guy, not at all. He generally cares for these children, but he just goes by the rule book. Straight by the rule book. He does not question anything. And that's a huge flaw in his character and something he explores throughout the story. So they pick him because of that, because he just doesn't seem to care much. So he's sent to this orphanage, like at the end of the whole land we're in. And the orphanage is inhabited with very, very special children, so special that they keep their existence a secret. The orphanage is led, the master is a man named Arthur Panassus, and he's very mysterious too. And Linus gets there, he's completely overwhelmed by the situation because he does not know what he gets into in advance. He is ordered to read the files extremely upper management gives him once he arrives. And because he's the man he is, going by the rule book, etc., he really does that. He does not prepare himself in advance. And he's overwhelmed. He is shocked. He is so confused. This orphanage is different to the others he went to. It's not as clinical. Arthur is really approachable. He cares a lot for the children under his tutelage. Is it tutelage? Tutelage? The children he cares for. And Linus tries to go by the rule book as he usually does. He tries to remain distant. He tries not to get involved. But these children and this place warms its way into his heart, and he realizes he cares more than he believes he does. Also, he's there for a whole month, so there's a lot of time for him to actually adapt to his surroundings and learn things. And this is so beautiful. I loved it. I loved how we have this man in his 40s who is set in his ways and who thinks he's set in his ways, and that this is his life, that this kind of bleak, boring life is his, and that he can't change it because it's always been like that. And why and how could you change something that's always been the way it has been? Does it make sense? I hope it does. He starts to open up. He starts to understand that not everything is on first glance what meets the eye, that sometimes you need to look deeper. You need to allow people to get close to you. You have to open up. He figures he cares a lot. He gets involved with the whole people in this orphanage. He starts to help out because he's initially a good person. He's not mean. He's not evil. So when a child is in need, he does reach out. And they touch on his heart. And Arthur touches on his heart too. And I loved how the relationship progressed. Because at the beginning, I wouldn't say they didn't like each other. It's just that Linus really, really wanted to remain a firm distance. And he did not trust Arthur at all. And obviously Arthur needed to be very careful because this man, this person, Linus, is the person who could destroy it all for him. He could close the orphanage. And with closing the orphanage, it means all these children are on their own in a world that's not ready for them, that does not want to accept them. And this is an underlying topic as well. Obviously, it's about acceptance, it's about tolerance, it's about sometimes out of fear people do horrible things, and how hard it is to make a change at times, and how it's still worth trying, and how people can change. These two men, they get closer very slowly. It's a slow burn. And it's just so beautiful, that moment when I think Linus joins a lesson actually between Arthur and one of the kids, which is particularly special. Arthur and the kid talk about philosophy. I think they talk about Kant. Linus is a pretty educated man as well, so once he and Arthur are on their own, they actually connect through philosophy, and it was just such a feet-kicking moment for me. I felt it so much, and for the first time they actually called each other by the first name, and that's how the relationship progresses. Also, there are two men in their 40s, which was amazing. I love that. And Linus is not some super skinny hunk of a man. He has a dead bod. He has high blood pressure. And his doctor told him he has to watch out what he eats and eat more healthy and work out and stuff like that. And Arthur is a very handsome man, but he has his quirks too. And it's just so beautiful. Everything about this is so beautiful. I love it. Everyone should read The House in the Cerulean Sea. I actually lended out my book to one of my close friends. She read it already. She loved it as well. And I have by now forced it upon another friend as well. It's just beautiful. It's, yeah, I know some comments say it's a bit preachy. Maybe it is, but it still has a very beautiful message. And I think, in my opinion, it's worth the hype, and it's a new favorite of mine. I also think I read it in the perfect time for me, and in this time of my life, I really needed to read such a book because I struggled a lot with grief, and I have an emergency situation within my family. My mother is very ill, and I needed such a book, for my mental health. It was actually good for my mental health. Okay, I will try to keep the next one much shorter because I have rambled on and on about the first three books, I believe, particularly the last one. The next one I read was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy, and I think it's a second author. I'm not sure. I think there were two authors, and I'll be honest, I DNF'd it. So I will say something now which is super important to me. As an author, I will never badmouth another author. In a way, we are all co-workers. But I don't want to lie to you either. I will just tell you, in a non-ranty way why this book wasn't for me, because just because it wasn't for me doesn't mean it's not for anyone else. And this is a pretty popular book from what I know. And also and this is another side note, I'm making a lot of these, but I think at this point here it's important because the first 3 books I really, really enjoyed. My journey with reading was, I've read a lot. It was a main hobby for me as a kid, and I then went to uni and I actually studied literature. And for this first 25 years of my life, I mostly read classics and what we would call difficult, proper literature. And I burned out. OMG, you cannot believe how I burned out. When I finished my degree, I did not touch another book for years. And I'm not kidding. I just couldn't. I was so burned out, I couldn't read. And I've heard that's something that happens to a lot of literature students, because there's just so many literature lists, prize-worthy literature, difficult classics you can get through and not burn out. Like, seriously. And it's not to say that I did not enjoy any of these books. I've read plenty of classics I liked. I've read a lot of German classics I enjoyed. I read some English classics which I loved, and some French classics, etc. But it's all I read. And it's not just the classics. The classics aren't even the problem. It's also all these difficult, mind-numbing, sad, depressing topics. I just couldn't anymore. And then I stopped reading for a few years. And the funny thing is, this is a little anecdote, I met one of my co-students one day by coincidence in a bookstore. And we just caught up with each other, and then she said, yeah, she by chance, she told me she hasn't been able to read anything for years either. And then she started to read, and that's the only thing she's reading, books, erotica, books with white, we're talking like 15 years ago, books where there's this long-haired brunette man on the cover with this wind in his hair moment, and he has this damsel in distress in his arms. That's the type of books she read, and I just felt her so much, because there's this point in our life where we'll realize we want to read for our joy, and not because we have to, and because this is said to be such important literature. It's important to read that too, but not solely. And it also needs to happen intrinsically, I think. I need to want to read it. Yeah, maybe I also want to get educated on a topic. But it's also fine if I want to read something light and smutty, if that's what someone enjoys. This is the reason why, and that's why I'm telling you this, I'm not always knowing what to pick to read for myself. That's why I still struggle to find myself in certain genres. I have only recently started out to branch into horror genre, for example, or like I said, thriller. And that's why I do not know the genre norms and what to expect as a reader. It's new to me, so I'm still a bit in a testing phase. I think that's what I want to say. When I do not like a book, it's not necessarily on the author, it just isn't for me. And to repeat what I said before, you will not hear me badmouth another book. I'm just not going to do that unless we're talking really problematic things here. But obviously, this is not it. So, back to topic. I'm sorry for this detour, but I just wanted you to understand where I'm coming from and a little bit of my history towards reading. My Little Meet Cute has a very fun premise. I wanted to read a holiday romance, and it's said to be a holiday romance, and there is the female character is B, and she is a plus-sized amateur porn star. And on the other hand, we have Nolan. Nolan is a former teen star from a popular boy band, and they disbanded. He got caught up in a terrible scandal which ruined his image. And that's the two characters. By chance, B gets the opportunity to star in an actual Christmas Hallmark-ish movie, but obviously has to keep her porn star career a secret. This is her big chance to actually break into serious filming industry. Nolan, on the other hand, joins this movie to polish his image and to earn some money for his family. His mother struggles with mental health and he wants to support his family. They meet, and Nolan actually knows her because he's a top subscriber to her porn content. And she has a little crush on him too, a teenage crush. This is the basic plot. My personal issue was that I noticed for myself that plot is more important to me than the smutty parts. I enjoy smut. I can read smut, but I don't need it. If a book does well, it doesn't matter. I don't know what I want to say. It really doesn't matter to me. I can read smutty books. I can read books with zero smut. But for me, the most important part is still the plot. I need to like the plot and I need to feel the characters in a way. And this was more of an erotic read and more of a smutty read. And that, although the smut only started like 40% in, but they were constantly horny. It was so funny because Nolan, whenever he saw B, when she was close by, when only she was existing in the same room, he was getting horny, and the same was happening to her. They were constantly lusting over each other. It didn't really catch me, and it didn't really draw me in, so I decided to DNF it. No hard feelings, no pun intended. Oh my god, how old that? It's like I'm 15 again. I do think this book is pretty popular for a reader base who enjoys an erotic romance. And I would not say not to read this. However, if you want a holiday romance, I do not think it really works as a holiday romance, I'll be honest. I did not get holiday feelings and I wanted to read a holiday romance, no matter if it's smutty or not. And can I just remember that I said I want to keep this short, and I think I blabbed about this longer than I rambled about The House in the Cerulean Sea. What I want to add, though, concerning the Merry Little Meet Cute, I like the representation in it. It has a plus-sized heroine, and Nolan, the main male character, loves her curves. There's not one moment where he thinks she's not absolutely stunning. So we have body positivity, which I really enjoyed, and there's also sex positivity. Bree does not feel embarrassed about her porn star career, and Nolan doesn't blame her for it either. This is how he knows her, and I really enjoyed that. I will say that was actually pretty cool. Moving on to the next book, an actual holiday romance I picked because I really wanted to read one, and it's called Holiday Romance by Catherine Walsh. And this I absolutely adored. I had a very good reading month. I will say this. This is a beautiful, low angst romance. And this is about Molly and Andrew, and they have such a peculiar friendship. They meet every year for the last flight back from Chicago to Dublin, because they're from Dublin or from Ireland and are traveling home for Christmas. And they always take the same flight. They have been doing that for 10 years. And that's how they actually befriended each other. Andrew, in the first year, Andrew was actually the boyfriend of one of Molly's friends. So that's how she knew, or that's how they knew each other. But since then, they grew closer. They actually became friends. They are genuine friends. They share their problems with each other. They date other people, etc. This year, however, they want to travel back. They meet as usual at the airport. They have booked their seats, their flight. But there is a snowstorm in Chicago and all flights are cancelled. So while Molly is not big on Christmas, she's a bit of a Grinch, Andrew loves Christmas, and being home for Christmas with his family is really important to him. Molly suddenly has this urge to help him get home for Christmas. They start this crazy travel back home. The first half of the book is them actually traveling and trying to find a way back to Ireland, and the second half is them actually being there. I would say that the first half was particularly strong because it was just so hilarious to see them rush from one place to another. I love the chemistry they have. They have a really witty sense of humor. I loved Molly, absolutely adored her. I could see myself in her a little bit. She has this career as a lawyer, but she feels very unhappy. At the same time, she does not truly know what she wants in life. She doesn't have this big dream other people have, when some of the kids who study and they just know they have this deep inner urge to become a doctor or do something else. They have this talent, this dream, and Molly did not have that. That's why she struggles with her career. She doesn't like what she's doing. She knows that much, but she also has a hard time changing that. I just really felt that. I also like that she's sometimes a little bit in her head and worrying. I'm like that too. Andrew is a very nice guy. He's pretty witty. He has this typical English sense of humor that how I, as a non-English person, would see it at least or define it. They're flirting. They're starting to imagine the options and possibilities they have as a couple. And they've never considered each other as a possible partner, but now they do. It's a very light read. It's fun. It's cute. It's low angst, and it was the perfect Christmas read. The next book I read is Comfort Me with Apples by, and now I have to look down on my sheet of paper because I know that the titles and authors there, and I cannot. It just doesn't stick in my head. By Catherine M. Valente? I'm not sure. I checked on her author page and it says she's born in the US. She was born in the US, but it doesn't need to mean she does not have any, Spanish roots or Mexican roots. I don't know. Valente sounds Spanish. Is it Spanish? Could be Italian too, but she also could be married. Bottom line is, I do not know how to pronounce her name. I'm sorry. Comfort Me with Apples is a horror novella. Let me summarize it in a way that does not give away anything. This is about Sophia, and Sophia is like this cute little woman, and she does not have any difficult thoughts and a silly little head. She does not need to worry her silly little mind over silly little things, because she's this sweet, always happy woman, and why worry? She lives in this small community of people who are trying to keep her happy, and she's married, and she's just there to please her husband. She's just happy to serve him and to be his perfect little wife and not worry about anything, not having any difficult thoughts. Sounds great, doesn't it? I will say this is different to The Woman in the Cabin, because I am aware that it sounds very similar, but this is a whole different story. Now, I do not want to say any more, because anything I could say is a spoiler, and this is a very short book, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone. I will say that this takes a direction I know not everyone will be happy with. I think this is the reason why it's a bit controversial. It has very mixed ratings, and it seems like most people either love this book or hate it. I do not know how to explain why. I'm wondering if I should make another spoiler. You know what? We'll make another spoiler part, and if you want to read this, skip ahead. I would recommend reading this if you like horror novels, and if what I said is in any way intriguing to you, and also if you don't mind it being a little bit controversial. And when I say controversial, I don't mean that it's like I cannot say what I get without it being a spoiler. You know what? You're an adult. If you feel like you want to read it, read it. Okay, I'll go and a few spoilers now. Spoiler warning. We're starting now. This is basically, and this is what I meant with it being controversial, it takes a biblical turn. This community we're talking about is actually the Garden Eden. It's not so much a retelling or version of Adam and Eve. It's the prequel to Adam and Eve and the woman who was there before Eve. This is obviously gruesome, and these women are interchangeable, and they get their bones scattered around, and they're made from Adam. You know, most of you know the story, so there's some of the biblical parts in there, but obviously in a more horror way, in a more gruesome way. This is why I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to mention the words biblical or religion or something before, because then you just know what happens, because the title says comfort me with apples, and it's biblical and an apple. I found it very interesting. I found the premise interesting. I was not initially too excited about this twist into this more biblical direction. It's not a retelling. It's not written for very religious people. So also a warning there. I liked the eerie beginning where you just don't know what's happening, because Sophia is really not... You know something is wrong, but she doesn't know something is wrong. She discovers this bone in one of her drawers, and it's clearly a finger bone. And that's the moment she starts questioning everything. And that's what I find interesting, there are new people appearing. I think the one person, for example, right at the end, when Sophia understands that the house is full of remnants of previous women, and she runs in because she's just so overwhelmed, she runs and meets this other guy at the end of the whole area. That's the serpent. So this guy there is the serpent, and I think it was, for the short time he appeared, I think it was very interesting. Also his conversation with Sophia was very interesting. I don't want to make a literal analysis. I did not dive deep enough into this to do that. But obviously there are this tropes. I don't want to call them tropes. It's not tropey. But these topics of if Eve was, or Sophia in this case, was also made by God. Why does she matter so little? Then we have the father pandering to every of Adam's wishes and giving him woman after woman after woman, and he just gets tired of them all in one way or another and kills them. He kills them and rips them apart. The father, in a way, kind of punishes him by taking away parts of Adam and creating the next woman out of a part from him. But he still gives him new women. I thought it was a really interesting plot. I understand, though, that for someone who is religious, maybe, this might not be a read they enjoy. The other person appearing, the other man in the story, aside from Adam and the serpent, is this weird guy who appears relatively early in the plot. And he's one of the reasons Sophia starts to question so many things, because he just triggers something in her, and it's implied that there is a woman before her. She learns that later from the serpent. The only woman who escaped. The only one. Because all the others returned to Adam and got killed because they could not do anything else. And Sophia can't run either because she was formed and made so she would not be unhappy, so she would love Adam unconditionally. It's very, very depressing. It's a bit bleak. This other woman managed to run, and I think it was the one before her, and her name is Lilith. And it's said that Lilith managed to convince this guy, the one who appears relatively early, the one who was sent out to actually kill her, to punish her because she ran from Adam, he did not, because she's so convincing that he did not. And I think this guy here that appears, it might be the devil. That's just how I would interpret this plot. I was initially a little bit disappointed by the ending. Because again, and I'm really spoiling here everything, Sophia does not run. She dies because she is the woman before Eve. Obviously, she cannot make it out there, or she would be Lilith. And I was a little bit disappointed by that because it ends with her ending. However, the last page of the book is actually that Eve wakes up. It starts the same as Sophia's story starts, but we know who Eve is, and we know that things will progress differently this time. After sleeping on this ending, I actually like it. I was first a bit meh about it because it's not really a good it didn't feel like a good conclusion. But it's only not a good conclusion if you separate the story from the metaphor it is, from the biblical background. But if you keep in mind that it is Adam and Eve and Sophia, it makes a lot more sense. I would say this book, for it being so short, kind of stayed with me, when you start thinking about something, and I think that's cool when a book does that. I also get why it's controversial, as in, for many reasons, this might not be the book a religious person enjoys, but it might also not the book an atheist might enjoy. Not everyone enjoys a book taking a biblical turn in any way. And I will say that I believe that there are readers of the horror genre who saw the twist coming, that this is about Adam and Eve, or not Eve, but Adam and Sophia. They were disappointed because for them it was so obvious. To me it wasn't, but I do not have a lot of experience with horror. I'm just only branching out into the horror genre. I did enjoy the book. I will say that. I will say, if you skip the spoiler, try to stay out of the reviews if you want to read this. It's just better to go into this book blindly and not know too much. Be very careful with the reviews. Finally, the last book I read, and it's The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. This is a fiction, also a novella, a pretty short one. It's about the queen who loves reading. This is really, the main character is the late Queen Elizabeth. She discovers her love for reading and for books by coincidence. I think there's this traveling library or bookshop, and she sees it by coincidence and then thinks it's impolite not to buy a book. She's very proper. She goes by very strict etiquette as we know it, as the royal she is. She starts reading, then she starts bonding with this servant, a young gay man. They bond over books. He becomes something like her assistant. The queen starts to question some of her duties. She doesn't always feel motivated anymore to do everything. She just wants to read. We get that. And this is a light and witty novella. There's no angst in it. It's just really a light novella with an interesting main character and a very interesting prose. It was at times a little bit difficult for me to read it because this is a type of prose I haven't read a lot in English, but I still really much enjoyed it. I loved the Queen's interaction with the Prime Minister in particular. It was so hilarious because it was such a thin line between her being very proper but also voicing her opinion. She is not a person who is scared of being firm and saying what she thinks. But at the same time, she needs to follow a specific protocol and understand and know her role, and she does that. And the Prime Minister is the same. And it's so funny to see everything from her point of view. It's just so interesting. And I loved her conversations with the Prime Minister in particular. It was just two worlds colliding. And it was a thin line for him as well. Sometimes he was just so helpless. It was so funny when the people around her were helpless because she developed this love for reading and then changed a lot of interactions. She did not follow the protocol strictly. A lot of her servants or people working in the palace, assistants, advisors, etc. They were just so overwhelmed by the situation. I think that's funny. The Prime Minister was taken by surprise as well because he thought their talks would follow a certain path they always had, but they didn't. I liked this book. It was a short fiction novella. I do think some people might find it a bit boring, maybe? I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. To sum this up, I think I had a great reading month because I found a new favorite this month. I had several reads I thoroughly enjoyed, and it just was one DNF. This is it. These were all my reads from December. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you read in December and what you liked in particular. And I see you in the next video. Bye!